Coulter lay in the dust, his breath shallow, eyes flickering open to a scene of desolation. The battlefield stretched endlessly around him, littered with the bodies of his fallen comrades. Smoke curled lazily into the sky, masking the sun in a thick haze. He could feel the ground beneath him cooling, the heat of battle fading as quickly as his people's resolve. His muscles screamed as he struggled to rise, but his body refused to obey. The ships, once a symbol of Arcani's strength, now retreated into the distance, their thrusters leaving only scorched earth and silence. They had left him. His own people had abandoned him to die among the rubble of their defeat. Coulter gritted his teeth, suppressing the bitterness welling in his throat. He had always been a warrior, trained since youth in the ways of Arcani's martial arts, honing his skills to perfection. And yet, when it mattered most, his leadership had left him behind, seeing him not as an asset but a threat. The realization cut deeper than any blade. The sound of boots crunching through the debris snapped him back to the present. His heart pounded, and instinct took over. Coulter's hand shot to his side, gripping the hilt of his blade. He would not die here, not without a fight. Through the haze, shapes emerged, humans. A group of them, battle-worn but methodical, their weapons trained on the ground ahead. Coulter's fingers twitched, calculating his chances. "Easy, we're not here to finish you off," came a voice, gruff but calm. The speaker stepped forward, helmet removed, revealing the weathered face of a human soldier, scarred, grizzled, and unshaken by the carnage around them. Coulter's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Words would do little good here. Captain Aiden knelt beside him, studying the small but fierce alien warrior with measured curiosity. "You're Arcanis, right? Tough little fighters, I've heard." Coulter's grip on the blade tightened, but he stayed his hand. He was in no condition to fight, not now. Aiden's eyes flicked to the retreating ships on the horizon. "Seems your people didn't think you were worth taking with them." The statement hung in the air, a cold reminder of Coulter's isolation. Still, he refused to acknowledge it. He would not show weakness in front of this human. Aiden sighed, standing to his full height. "We've got a med bay on our ship. You look like you could use it. Or," he shrugged, "you could stay here. Your call." The silence stretched on as Coulter weighed his options. Death, alone in the ruins of a failed battle, or survival alongside strangers who might be just as dangerous as those who betrayed him. His pride screamed at him to refuse the offer, to let himself fade into nothing. But survival, it was instinct, and it gnawed at him. He gave a slight nod, barely perceptible, but enough. Aiden gestured to his team, who moved in quickly, lifting Coulter onto a makeshift stretcher. He didn't resist, though every fiber of his being wanted to. The humans spoke in low tones, and their movements were brisk, efficient. Coulter could see that they, too, were veterans of battle. There was no hesitation in their actions, no wasted energy. As they carried him toward their ship, Coulter glanced back at the battlefield, at the bodies of his fellow warriors scattered across the earth. His gaze lingered on the horizon, where the ships of the Arcanis fleet had vanished into the clouds. Bitterness swelled in his chest once more, but now it was laced with something else, resolve. Once inside the human ship, the atmosphere shifted. It was quiet, almost serene, a stark contrast to the chaos they had left behind. Coulter was placed in the medbay, where a human medic began working on his injuries. He felt the sting of antiseptic and the pressure of bandages being applied, but his mind was elsewhere. Aiden stood at the doorway, watching. "You're lucky we found you when we did," he said, his tone casual but laced with curiosity. "You've got a reputation, Coulter. Arcani's fighters don't go down easy." Coulter finally met Aiden's gaze. "My people abandoned me," he said, his voice low but steady. Aiden's brow furrowed. "Why?" Coulter hesitated. The truth tasted bitter on his tongue, but there was no point in hiding it now. "Because I was too strong. My influence grew, and they feared it. This battle, it was their way of getting rid of me." Aiden let out a slow whistle. "Politics, even out here, huh?" "Figures." Coulter didn't respond. He had spent years dedicating his life to the service of his people, fighting for their survival, their honor. And in the end, they had betrayed him out of fear. "I'm no stranger to betrayal," Aiden said, stepping further into the room. "But I've learned something along the way. Sometimes, the people who abandon you are the ones who should be afraid." Coulter looked up, meeting Aiden's eyes once more. He saw no pity there, only understanding. And something else, an offer. An offer of an alliance that could change everything. Coulter's jaw clenched. "Then let them be afraid." Aiden's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "Welcome aboard." The tension in the room eased slightly, but the weight of what was to come settled between them. Coulter's path forward was no longer one of isolation. He wasn't alone anymore. And that, he knew, was just the beginning. The hum of the ship's engines reverberated through the walls, a steady, low thrum that lulled most into a state of quiet focus. But Coulter wasn't like the rest of the humans on board. For him, the silence felt stifling, a reminder of the void his people had left in his heart. The medbay lights were dim, casting long shadows across the metal floor, and the steady beeping of the medical monitor was the only sound breaking the stillness. He stared at the ceiling, muscles tensed as his mind raced. Aiden had offered him a place, and Coulter had accepted it out of necessity, not trust. Still, the captain intrigued him. Aiden saw something in Coulter that no one else had ever bothered to notice. Even in the darkest moments, there had been something in Aiden's eyes that suggested understanding. Or maybe it was simply opportunism. Coulter couldn't be sure. A knock echoed softly from the medbay door. Aiden stepped inside, his usual confident posture slightly more relaxed, like a soldier off duty but still alert. "You look better," he said, a hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Those Arcani's genes heal fast, huh?" Coulter's gaze flicked toward him but didn't soften. "I didn't ask for your help." Aiden leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "No, but you accepted it. That counts for something." Silence stretched between them, the tension thickening. Aiden didn't push further, letting Coulter's guarded expression speak volumes. Coulter studied the captain for a moment, noting the weariness in his eyes, the kind that comes from years of battle, not just the one they'd survived together. "Why did you offer it?" Coulter finally asked, his voice low and sharp. "You had nothing to gain." Aiden met his gaze without hesitation. "I don't like seeing good fighters wasted. And you're better than most I've seen." Coulter grunted, turning his eyes back to the ceiling. "A good fighter? That's all I am to you, then." Aiden's expression hardened slightly. "That's all you've shown me so far." The words stung, more than Coulter had expected. He had spent years perfecting his skills, believing that was all that mattered. And yet, hearing it distilled into something so cold, so simple, made it feel hollow. Before Coulter could respond, the door slid open again. One of Aiden's crew members, a woman with short-cropped hair and a calculating look in her eyes, stepped inside. "Captain, we've picked up chatter. Something big's happening in Arcani's space." Aiden straightened instantly. "What is it?" She tossed him a handheld device, and a series of garbled voices crackled from it. "Civil unrest. The ruling council's trying to keep it quiet, but word's getting out. There's talk of a coup." Coulter's chest tightened. He shot a sharp look at the device, straining to catch every word, though the static made it difficult. The ruling council, the same council that had left him to die, was now facing the very instability they had feared. Coulter's fingers twitched, his thoughts swirling. Aiden observed Coulter's reaction closely. "You want in on this, don't you?" Coulter didn't answer immediately. His mind replayed the memories of betrayal, the moment his people turned their backs on him. He could let them burn, leave them to their fate. But that wasn't who he was. His honor demanded something else. "I want to face them," Coulter said, his voice steady. "Not for revenge. For justice." Aiden raised an eyebrow. "Justice, huh? You're a more principled man than I gave you credit for." Coulter met his gaze head-on. "It's not principle. It's survival. If they fall, the Arcani's people will fall with them." Aiden nodded slowly. "Then we're going back." Coulter's eyes narrowed. Why? What do you stand to gain? Aiden smirked. Let's just say I have a distaste for corrupt leadership. And besides, I'm curious to see how this plays out. Coulter didn't fully trust Aiden's motives, but the captain was offering him something he couldn't achieve alone, an opportunity to reclaim his people's future. Whether Aiden was motivated by curiosity, profit, or something else, it didn't matter. Coulter needed allies. The ship shifted into action almost immediately, Aiden's crew moving with precision and purpose. Coulter watched from the sidelines, gauging their efficiency. They were well-trained, disciplined, everything he'd expect from a human mercenary crew. But there was something else, a loyalty that seemed to run deeper than contracts or credits. He hadn't expected that. As they prepared to leave the med bay, Aiden turned to Coulter. I know you don't trust me yet. That's fine. But you're going to need us to pull this off. And we're going to need you. Coulter nodded, his jaw tight. I'll fight beside you, human. But when the time comes, I'll be the one to face them. Aiden clapped him on the shoulder, a firm gesture of understanding. Deal. The ship's engines roared to life, vibrating through the floor as they ascended into the vastness of space. Coulter felt a familiar surge of anticipation rising within him. His path was clear now. He would face the Council, not as their pawn, but as their reckoning. As the stars blurred outside the viewport, Coulter allowed himself a rare moment of calm. The future of his people hung in the balance, and he would be the one to decide it. Not the Council. Not their fear. Him. The tension in the ship thickened as they hurtled toward their destination, the stakes rising with each passing second. Coulter could feel it. His fight was just beginning. Coulter stood in the dimly lit training room, the hum of the ship's engine a constant backdrop. The space was utilitarian, lined with weapons racks and padded mats. It was the kind of place meant for sweat, bruises, and growth, where warriors honed their craft, or in this case, mercenaries learned something new. Across from him, Aiden's team watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. They were battle-hardened, sure of their skills, but Coulter had seen their limits. They relied too heavily on human technology, guns, explosives, armor. Useful tools, but tools could fail. A true warrior was the weapon. Aiden leaned against the wall, arms crossed. All right, Coulter. Show us what makes you special. Coulter's expression remained stoic as he stepped onto the mat. You rely on your weapons too much, he said, voice steady. When they fail, what do you have left? One of the mercenaries, a burly man named Harris, smirked. We've got fists. Not like we need anything else. Coulter's gaze flicked toward Harris, his eyes narrowing slightly. Without another word, he gestured for Harris to step forward. The man rolled his shoulders and swaggered onto the mat, clearly not expecting much. All right, little guy. Let's see what you got. Coulter didn't move. He stood perfectly still, watching Harris with the calm intensity of a predator assessing prey. The air seemed to thicken with anticipation. Harris grinned, his fists raised as he took a playful jab forward. In that moment, Coulter struck. It was over in seconds. Coulter's small frame moved like a blur, darting under Harris's punch and locking his arm in a painful twist. With a single, fluid motion, Coulter swept the man's legs out from under him and sent him crashing to the mat. Harris grunted, more out of surprise than pain, as Coulter released him and stepped back. The room fell silent, the other mercenaries staring at Coulter with wide eyes. Aiden's lips twitched into a faint smile, though he said nothing. Coulter straightened, his calm demeanor unshaken. Your strength means nothing if it is unfocused, he said, his voice low but firm. Arcani's warriors do not rely on size or power. We rely on precision. Harris climbed to his feet, rubbing his shoulder with a wince but nodding in respect. All right, fair enough. I wasn't expecting that. Aiden pushed off the wall, his expression thoughtful. Teach them, he said simply. Show my team what you know. Coulter inclined his head. It will take time. But if you are willing to learn, you will become more than just mercenaries. The training sessions began the next day. Coulter led the team through drills, teaching them how to use their bodies as weapons, how to anticipate an opponent's moves, how to strike with precision and fluidity. The humans were quick learners, adapting faster than he expected. They moved with a raw power that he refined, turning brute strength into lethal grace. Days passed in a blur of practice and preparation, but even as Coulter taught, the weight of their impending mission hung over him. The coup on Arcanis was growing more volatile. Reports filtered in through the ship's comms, civil unrest, the council tightening its grip, factions forming in secret. Time was running out. One evening, after an intense sparring session, Coulter found himself alone in the ship's observation deck. The vastness of space stretched out before him, a sea of stars that felt both endless and suffocating. His reflection stared back at him from the window, small and fierce, but there was doubt in his eyes. He had chosen this path, to confront the council, to reclaim his honor, but the weight of it bore down on him. Could he really change the fate of his people? Or was he walking into a death trap, dragging the humans with him? The door slid open behind him, and Aiden stepped inside. "You're thinking too hard," he said, leaning against the wall beside Coulter. Coulter didn't turn. "You put a lot of trust in me, human." "Why?" Aiden shrugged. "I've learned to trust my instincts. And my instincts tell me you're not the kind to back down from a fight, even if it's against impossible odds." Coulter's jaw tightened. "Impossible odds don't guarantee victory." "No, but they make for a hell of a story," Aiden said, a grin tugging at his lips. "Besides, we're not exactly strangers to bad odds. You should see some of the messes we've pulled ourselves out of." Coulter finally turned to face him. "You and your crew, you don't have to follow me into this. The council is dangerous. You could lose everything." Aiden's expression softened slightly. "We all have something to lose, Coulter. But we're here because we choose to be. Don't forget that." Coulter studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "Then I won't." Aiden clapped him on the shoulder. "Good. Now get some rest. We're going to need you sharp." As Aiden left, Coulter returned his gaze to the stars. The tension inside him hadn't dissipated, but there was a sense of clarity now. The humans were with him, not out of obligation, but out of choice. And that made all the difference. With renewed resolve, Coulter turned away from the window, heading back to the training room. The final battle was coming, and he would be ready. They all would be. The capital of Arcanis loomed ahead, a sprawling city of towering structures and gleaming spires, once symbols of power and unity, now marred by the chaos of civil unrest. Fires dotted the horizon, casting plumes of smoke into the darkening sky. Even from this distance, Coulter could feel the tension in the air, a city on the brink of tearing itself apart. "We're entering their airspace." Aiden's voice crackled over the comms. "They know we're coming." Coulter stood at the ship's viewport, his eyes locked on the city below. His heart pounded steadily, but his mind was sharp, focused. He had trained for this moment, endured betrayal and exile, and now, finally, he was returning to confront the council. This wasn't just about vengeance. It was about reclaiming his people's future. Behind him, Aiden and the rest of the crew prepared for the landing. The hum of activity filled the ship, but Coulter remained silent, his gaze unwavering. He had taught them all he knew, honed their skills, and now they were ready. But the battle ahead would not be won with force alone. This would be a test of will, of strategy. The ship descended quickly, slicing through the city's perimeter defenses before touching down in a narrow clearing near the council's stronghold. The ground trembled as the engines powered down, leaving a thick silence that was quickly broken by the distant roar of explosions. Coulter tightened the straps of his armor, the familiar weight grounding him as he stepped toward the exit ramp. Aiden met him at the door, his face grim but resolute. "We're with you, Coulter. No matter what." Coulter nodded once, his gratitude unspoken but clear. They had chosen to follow him, these humans, despite the dangers. In a strange way, they had become more of an ally than his own people ever had. He wouldn't forget that. The ramp lowered with a hiss, and Coulter stepped into the chaos of the capital. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning debris. Civilians ran through the streets, seeking shelter from the skirmishes erupting between loyalist forces and rebel factions. It was a city divided, just as the council had feared. Aiden and his team flanked Coulter as they made their way through the narrow streets, their weapons ready but undrawn. They moved with purpose, cutting through the heart of the unrest with a precision that spoke to their training. Coulter had given them the tools, and they had risen to the occasion. As they neared the council's stronghold, a massive, fortress-like structure perched atop the city's highest hill, Coulter slowed. The final confrontation was close now, he could feel it. The council's guard would be waiting, ready to protect their power at any cost. "They'll expect us to charge in, guns blazing," Aiden said, scanning the terrain ahead. "But you've got a different plan, don't you?" Coulter's eyes narrowed. "We go straight for the heart. Their defenses are strongest at the gates, but that's where they're focused. There's a passage through the lower levels, an old supply route they've long since abandoned. That's where we strike." Aiden grinned. "I like it. Quick and clean." With the plan in motion, they moved swiftly toward the hidden entrance Coulter had scouted during his time on the council. It was a narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for a man to fit through, but it led directly beneath the stronghold's main hall. As they descended into the darkness, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by the steady drip of water from the ancient stone walls. The tension in the air grew thicker with every step. Coulter's senses were heightened, his every movement precise as they navigated the winding tunnels. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the culmination of years of exile, of betrayal, of preparation. At last, they reached the end of the tunnel, a heavy steel grate blocking their path. Coulter motioned for the team to stop, crouching low as he inspected the lock. It was old, rusted from years of disuse. With a quick twist of his wrist, he pried it open, the grate sliding aside with a soft groan. Beyond the grate lay the council's inner sanctum. The room was vast, its high ceilings echoing with the distant murmur of voices. The council sat at the far end, cloaked in shadow, surrounded by their most loyal guards. Coulter stepped forward, his every movement controlled, deliberate. The guards tensed at his approach, but the council raised a hand, halting them. The leader of the council, a tall figure draped in ornate robes, stepped into the light, his face a mask of calm authority. "So," the leader said, his voice cold and measured, "the exile returns. What is it you hope to accomplish here, Coulter?" Coulter met his gaze without flinching. "You've led our people into ruin. Your fear and greed have fractured what once made us strong." The leader's lips curled into a thin smile. "And you think you can do better? You, who were cast out for defying the very structure that holds us together." "I defied corruption," Coulter said, his voice steady. "And now I've come to end it." With a swift motion, Aiden and his team moved into position, their weapons trained on the guards. The tension in the room spiked, every breath heavy with anticipation. But Coulter wasn't here for bloodshed, he was here for something far greater. "You can still stand down," Coulter said, his gaze fixed on the council leader. "You've seen the city. The people won't follow you anymore. This is your last chance." For a moment, the leader hesitated, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he raised his hand, signaling his guards to lower their weapons. Coulter exhaled, a wave of relief washing over him. The battle was won, but not through violence. It had been fought in the minds and hearts of his people, and today, they had chosen a new path. As the council disbanded, Aiden clapped Coulter on the back, a grin spreading across his face. "Well, I'll be damned. You did it." Coulter allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. The city was his to rebuild, but for now, the victory was enough.